home and native land, Toronto's newest pulp culture podcast, covering your favorite comics, collectibles, media, nerderific origin stories, and more. Hosted by your northern neighbor, Jowy Pangilinan. Here it is, nerdos and nerdettes, Comic Sing!
Hey nerdos and nerdettes, we are here today with Nerdy and Pal from one of my favorite publishing houses ever. His name is Andrew Thomas of Chapterhouse Comics. And Andrew, you do it all. You do not only the lettering for every Chapterhouse comic I've ever read, you illustrate, you run the official Chapterhouse fan club, and you are front and center in all the cons that you're tabling.
That's right, yeah.
That's pretty much 120% accurate. And
I do, yes.
That's pretty much how I know you from. We met in Gotham Central, I believe. Yeah. And I was aspiring to be a letterer, but of course I was just telling him I'm still very, very intimidated with Illustrator.
Yes, it can be a very complicated program.
Sometimes it's one of those like too many options kind of situations, and you kind of don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good segue to learn where you started. Right?
Yeah, so, I mean, my technical training really is in game design. So yeah. I went to the Recording Arts Canada for game design, and I studied, quite a few things, from graphic design to 3D animation to audio engineering, all that stuff. All the things that you would need to build a game. So the key component there was the graphic design. So we learned Photoshop and Illustrator and Dreamweaver, almost the entire Adobe suite.
Adobe suite, yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you actually also because it was game design, but why did you go into the comic world rather than going into gaming?
Comics and illustration, it has been part of my life for really as long as I can remember. It was, it was my dad who kind of got me into drawing because, he used to doodle. He used to be, he was a journalist too, and he encouraged me to draw. And just, whenever I felt like it, I would always walk around with a sketchbook and doodling little Batmans or Dragon Ball or something like that. So I did that throughout school too. I got in trouble. I was one of those guys that always doodled in class.
And the halls of John Cabot.
Oh yes. I went to that's high school. Yeah.
We both wore kilts, by the way. Just want to put that out to the people.
Oh yeah. I rocked that kilt.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say, what is it like to be so hands-on in making comics and being in the con trenches, meeting new readers, like what we're doing today?
You know what? It's while it can be tiring and exhausting because hopping from convention to convention is
a lot of driving.
It's a lot of driving too.
Yeah.
I mean, I do a lot of driving. But mind you, I enjoy the drive and I enjoy traveling. My family, we travel quite a bit, quite often. So. It's rewarding. You get to be, front and center, getting to talk about these characters and meeting people who already know about these characters, and so you're kind of like having a total geek nerd out, spazzing
together.
Out over, yeah,
from one side of the counter to the other.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I actually really like today when we meet someone. There was one guy that we met that started reading Captain Canuck through John Cabot. A long time ago. So he was ready with his $20 bill to give to us because he was all about that Captain Canuck today.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And what the cool thing too about these characters is that these characters that Chapterhouse has kind of resurrected because a lot of them existed back in the day, in the some of the Canadian whites and like Freelance and Phantoma, which is arguably one like the first female superhero ever. That even predates Wonder Woman. So
that's really old then.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it
seriously.
is. So it's just like. when people come and start talking about it and start, they show their enthusiasm and their excitement for it, it's hard not to kind of get energized and be enthusiastic with them. So
and keep on doing what you do, right?
Oh yeah, you're definitely, and I love the experience, and it makes me want to just keep trucking forward.
That's very cool. So we learned about how you got a little bit into comic books, and of course you're an illustrator as well as a letterer. But I find that I really like the way that you do like the kitty art. And I don't know any other way to describe it, but that's my favorite Andrew Thomas thing.
And you know what? You wouldn't be the only one, because I actually enjoy that kitty style too. I like to think that as an artist, I can be very versatile, and my art can adapt to based on the project that it needs. And I think that in many cases that when you're looking at a project or reading a pitch, it's the pitch calls for a style, and it's not necessarily a conscious decision, more so a subconscious.
I guess it kind of like when your pen hits the paper, that's when the magic happens. It's not always like preconceived.
No, mind you, I mean you are putting a bit of thought into it too, because not every time you put that pencil to paper it's going to be perfect. But
right.
But yeah, going back to the kid style. I mean, I absolutely love drawing these kitty cartoons and wanting to tap more into the kid demographic.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, you're doing that with Auric's Tales for sure.
Yeah, Auric's Tall Tales, and that's basically our kid alternative to the story, to our character, and the kids love it. We're getting some feedback, and they enjoy reading it with their parents, so...
Very cool. But could I say that is your preferred style, though, if you had to choose?
That's, that is a good question. I mean, as an artist, the one thing that people kind of strive towards is finding that particular style. Mm-hmm. Now, would I go as far as saying as that is my style now, or that's my go-to style? It's hard for me to say, because, I mean, I'm still drawing Auric on the regular in that Auric style.
In his regular style,
that regular style. But, I mean, I have ideas and premises for other kids' stuff, and that gets me excited. So perhaps,
I can't wait.
Perhaps that's I'm working towards being, classifying myself as a kid's cartoonist,
For sure. We also talked about today how difficult it could actually be, because it kind of reminds me a little bit of, like, let's say pop figures. Pop figures, there's just minimal design to it, but it gets to the point. And even though half of these guys don't have mouths, it's like, how minimal can you get with getting all those expressions? And I think that's really hard to do, to be so simplistic about that.
Yeah, it is, because you're a lot of times we're overthinking these things. We're overthinking concepts, and sometimes I gotta, kind of pull myself back and think, hey, less is more. Less is more.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always ready to look at some inspiration. I love the art styles of Scotty Young and Art Balthazar, and these guys, like, just the way they tell stories in such a fun and cute and fashionable way. It really speaks to me.
Yeah, that's very cool. And also, you are with Chapterhouse Comics, of course. Mm-hmm. As I said, one of my favorite publishers out there, because I'm reading everything from Jason Liu's book, soon to be Auric as well, and Captain Canuck. I think the first time that I actually came across him was when I met Richard Comley, and that was in Hamilton, and we were in a con there, and I saw him, and I was wearing this like Metropolis cop outfit, and he's called me officer ever since, and I don't think he knows my name.
This was last year?
No, this was like 3 years ago.
Oh, 3 years ago.
I think this was 3 or 5 years ago, because you guys were just releasing the web series in YouTube.
Oh, right. Yeah. This would have been 2012, roughly.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Or 13.
Now we're Facebook friends.
Yeah.
It's great. I know, it's come a long way from him calling me officer to him friending me on Facebook. But tell us a little bit about Chapterhouse and that came to be.
Oh, man. don't know if...
Where do you even start, right?
Yeah, you know, I might not even be the right guy for that, but I'll do my best. I know that Chapterhouse, the founder, Fatty Hakeem,
Yes.
I know he was a lifelong comic book fan too, and just based on what he's told me or what I've read, is like one of the first comic books that he ever picked up was the original Captain Canuck #1 from 1975, under the imprint of Comely Comics. So he, this was a time where Captain Canuck wasn't really relevant anymore. Like he's kind of made appearances here and there, and he's kind of popped in and out of history and tried to make some comebacks, but it never really.
Wait, is Captain Canuck like the DJ Khaled of comics?
Oh.
He just pops in and out and just make cameos like that. Yeah, okay.
Oh man, what a comparison! Well done.
I know. I guess.
So I mean, yeah, because he had a few. We had the Captain Canuck Reborn and Unholy War. So Fatty sits down with Richard and basically kind of brings up the idea that he wants to kind of restart Captain Canuck from scratch. And as a fan, you know, it was almost like a passion project.
Yeah.
So he invested into that, and he created Chapterhouse Comics, or Chapterhouse Publishing was the imprint.
Yeah.
And so that's when they got to work on doing the animated series, and
that's the first thing that I've ever seen. Yeah.
5-minute little webisodes, and it's absolutely fantastic. And they got some really nice top tier talent.
Big names on the voice actors.
And I've met these guys personally too. And so Paul Amos, who plays Mr. Gold in the series, he was up in Timmins a few weeks back, and I got to see. We went to this bar afterwards, and I got to see him sing "Happy Birthday" in Welsh to somebody, and he's just it was. And just watching him talk and like performing, that was an experience. So there he's singing, and it's just like he looks like a real life supervillain.
That's amazing. And this wasn't. I mean, no offense, you know. I mean, this is a very like handsome kind of. Oh yeah. You know, square jawed almost kind of thing going on there. Totally agree with you.
Oh yeah,
And hold on, nobody videotaped this.
I don't know if anybody did. I'm sure somebody did. I'm sure somebody did.
I should find it in a hashtag, you know, Welsh Happy Birthday,
Welsh
Timmins, Ontario. Let's see what comes up with that. And also, I wanted to know, have you worked with anyone in Chapterhouse, or I mean, in any other cases that, I mean, you were a fan of them, maybe their art or their writing style, and then you actually get to work with them? Like, how does that feel?
It was, well, you know what? I mean, definitely. I was definitely. Jumping on that bandwagon when the animated series came out. Mind you, I mean, I've known of Captain Canuck, but it's actually kind of funny because in high school, or even I think it was even before high school, I wanted to create a Canadian superhero, and even before I even knew of Captain Canuck, I came up with the name Captain Canada.
Right.
Kind of, and I'm sure a lot of people, you know, have come to the same conclusion. But
the CC thing kind of worked out, right?
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, hey, Captain Canada. But it's like, oh, but someone told me it's like, you know, Captain Canuck already exists, right? I'm like, well, there you go. So I look into that now, and here we go. Many moons later, I actually get to work with that same character. So,
well, you can always do Major Mississauga if you want to do that, or I can't think of anything B sounding for Brampton, but
the Brampton Beast,
which
is already a sports team, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably somewhere in like Bouvard or something like that. But we'll work on it. We'll see. That could be my trial run for lettering.
Oh, there you go.
And we can just throw it away after because it's just way embarrassing. And Jay Baruchel, and I know this guy from PMK, of course.
Oh yeah, me too.
As a Canadian kid, it was always Mighty Machines and TVO Kids, followed by PMK, and your daily dose of polka dot anything. Canadian kids and their polka dot shorts, door, you name it, we polka dotted it. You met him, I'm assuming, of course, and you've worked with him.
I met him in person last year at the Mississauga Comic Expo.
Yeah.
When he came, when he was with the Chapterhouse gang.
Yeah.
I finally got to meet him in person.
Very cool.
And say, hey, how's it going?
And he's the CEO now?
CCO.
CCO.
So he's the chief creative officer.
Oh, I thought chief comic guy, something.
Chief comic.
Chief comic guy.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
Yeah, so I believe the way the story goes, as I understand it, is that Jay sat down with Fatty, and he kind of wanted to talk about adapting Captain Canuck into some sort of screenplay.
Oh,
yeah,
screenplay.
Yeah, screenplay.
No kidding.
So there was those initial talks, and they were talking about that, and I think